Are you sure this is the right line? The mother asked softly, glancing at the glowing first-class sign. Her tone carried both calm and caution, like someone aware that comfort often came with hidden costs. The father adjusted his boarding passes, his jaw steady. We paid for it. We belong here. His words weren't loud, but firm enough to push back at the doubt pressing in from every direction. Around them, golden light shined across polished floors, yet silence weighed heavier than the luxury. Two businessmen in suits leaned toward each other, whispering just loud enough to be heard. Strange, isn't it? A woman's eyes lingered too long, scanning the family's coats, their shoes, as if proof of belonging could be measured in fabric. The teenage son shifted uneasily, tugging at his backpack strap. Why are they staring? His voice cracked, not in anger but confusion. The mother bent down, brushing his shoulder gently. Let them look. Walking straight is louder than explaining yourself. An airline staff member passed, her polite smile fading into something stiff, practiced, almost rehearsed. First-class check-in is here, she said, the words clear but edged with doubt. The father handed over the tickets without flinch. That's why we're here. Her eyes paused on the paper longer than necessary. Silence followed, not loud, not hostile, but enough for everyone nearby to feel the pause, to sense the unspoken question hanging heavy. Do they belong? The lounge remained quiet, but whispers carried through polished walls, softer than footsteps yet sharper than stares. And for the family, every step forward felt like walking against centuries of unspoken rules. The attendant's heels clicked against the marble floor, each step rehearsed, her posture carrying the calm certainty of someone who believed the uniform made her untouchable. She stopped before the family, lips curved into a smile polished enough to look kind from a distance, but hollow up close. I believe you're in the wrong line, she said, voice dipped in courtesy yet sharp enough to wound. The father didn't flinch. He held the tickets between two fingers and extended them forward. First class. 4 seats. His tone was even, refusing to match the hostility hidden behind her calmness. Her eyes skimmed the tickets, but not before drifting back to their faces, as if doubting the paper itself. She let silence stretch. People behind them shuffled, restless, yet no one interrupted. Some leaned closer, pretending to check phones while listening. The mother whispered, "Is there a problem?" Her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of being questioned again, in spaces where they had already paid their way. The attendant's smile didn't fade. These seats are limited. Are you sure these are yours? The teenage son's eyes widened. She thinks we stole them, he murmured, too loud to hide. The father placed a steady hand on his son's shoulder. They're ours. Check again. Her fingers hesitated. The tickets were scanned. The machine beeped in confirmation. The truth glowed on the small screen, undeniable. The attendant's smile faltered for half a breath, then returned, thinner, forced. Very well. You may proceed. But the moment lingered heavier than luggage. Power tilted in silence, not in the smile she wore, but in how every bystander now stared at her. Not them. The father held the ticket steady, the paper trembling only from the air conditioning, not his hand. His calmness cut through the tension, but disbelief still lingered in the attendant's eyes. Around them, travelers shifted uneasily. Phones tilted just enough to record. These passes are valid, the father said again, voice steady but heavy. The attendant's smile cracked. It's unusual, she murmured, softer now, but loud enough for judgment to drip between the words. Families like yours don't often... She stopped herself, but the pause spoke louder than any sentence could. The mother's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with the sharp sting of recognition. We bought these. We belong here. That should be enough. Silence followed, broken only by the sound of another passenger whispering, They have first class? The words were hushed, yet cut deep, spreading like ripples in still water. The teenage son clenched his jaw. Why are they looking at us like this? The father pressed his hand gently on his son's arm, grounding him. Because sometimes proof is never proof enough. The machine beeped again as the passes were scanned. green flashing like a verdict no one wanted to accept. A man in line shook his head, muttering, "Ridiculous!" But it wasn't aimed at the family. It was aimed at the system that questioned them. The shift was small, almost invisible, but real. The attendant's authority dimmed. Her words faltered, caught between duty and the exposure of her own prejudice. She stepped aside with a forced nod. The father didn't gloat. He simply walked forward, dignity intact, each step louder than the murmurs behind him. And in that silence, the tickets had spoken louder than voices ever could. The family settled into their seats, but the air was still tight, as if judgment itself had boarded with them. Eyes lingered. Whispers crawled across the cabin. The father adjusted his jacket, pretending not to notice, but his daughter's small voice cracked the illusion. "Daddy, did we do something wrong?" The words sliced deeper than any insult. The mother froze, her hands tightening around the armrest. The father's throat tightened, yet he forced calm into his reply. "No, sweetheart. We did everything right." Her eyes searched his, wide and trembling. "Then why were they looking at us like we shouldn't be here?" The silence after her question filled the cabin heavier than engines ever could. Passengers shifted, uncomfortable, their reflections caught in the child's wounded honesty. Even the attendant avoided meeting anyone's gaze. The son leaned forward, fists clenched. She shouldn't have to ask that. The father exhaled slowly, resting a hand over his son's. "This is not about who we are. It's about who they choose to see." Narration cut through the stillness like a quiet verdict. Children inherit wounds they never earned. And sometimes, a single question exposes the nation more than any protest could. A man across the aisle lowered his phone, his eyes softening. A woman whispered, almost to herself, "She's just a little girl." The ripple spread, invisible but undeniable. The mother finally spoke, her voice steady though her lips trembled. "You didn't do anything wrong. The wrong was never ours to carry." Her daughter leaned against her shoulder, still unsure, still hurt. Yet in that embrace, the shame shifted, no longer theirs, but on every silent witness in the room. The silence still lingered when the attendant's voice snapped like a whip. "Security, over here!" Her tone dressed in professionalism, but her eyes betrayed the urge to win, to control. Two guards approached, steps heavy, hands resting on their belts. Passengers leaned back, holding breaths. The father rose slowly, his boarding pass still clutched between his fingers. "We've shown our tickets," he said calmly. "We followed every instruction." The attendant's smile was tight, defensive. "Sir, this is procedure." "Procedure," the father repeated, his voice steady but carrying weight. "Or prejudice." The question landed louder than any shout. One guard hesitated, glancing toward the watching crowd. A woman near the aisle whispered, "He has tickets." "Why call them?" Phones lifted higher, screens glowing like silent witnesses. The daughter pressed into her mother's side. The boy's jaw clenched, whispering, "They want us out." The father nodded slightly. "They want quiet compliance. But we are not leaving quietly." Narration wove through the tense stillness. Sometimes dignity doesn't resist with fists. It resists by refusing to bow even when the world demands surrender. One guard cleared his throat. "Sir, if everything is in order, maybe we can—" But the attendant cut him off sharply. "Remove them, now!" The mother finally spoke, her voice trembling yet unbroken. "If we leave, it will not be our shame that follows. It will be yours." The guard froze. The crowd shifted. And in that fragile pause, injustice stood naked, exposed under the glow of every recording phone. The guards didn't touch them. They didn't have to. A slow walk was enough. The aisle itself felt like a trial. Eyes followed. Some wide with pity, others narrowed with relief that it wasn't them. The family moved together close, the mother's hand resting on her son's back. "Keep your head up," she whispered. Her voice cracked, but her eyes urged strength. The boy's gaze stayed low. "They're all staring." "They've always stared," the father replied, soft but certain. "Let them watch!" Phones lifted higher, catching every step. No one spoke. The silence cut sharper than insults. Narration slipped into the moment. There are verdicts passed without words, sentences handed down by nothing more than a glance. Today, the aisle was the courtroom, and their skin was the evidence. A passenger near the window whispered just loud enough to be heard. "They must have done something." The daughter flinched. Her mother squeezed her hand tighter. Another voice, this time trembling. "No!" They didn't. The father lifted his chin then, a single act of defiance. His eyes scanned the cabin, not in anger but in challenge. The weight shifted. A few lowered their phones, uncomfortable. Others held steady, guilty in their silence. The guard leading them glanced back, his jaw tight. "Almost there." The father answered quietly, "We were here already." It was not a defense. It was a truth, and as they reached the exit, the silence grew heavier, because silence, once broken, doesn't return. It lingers, demanding to be remembered. The doors closed behind them, but silence didn't end there. It stretched backward into years no one cared to name. A voice, not from the present but remembered, surfaced. A woman once told her story in a lobby that smelled of coffee and bleach. "They sold my seat," she whispered, "but the seat stayed empty all flight." Her complaint was filed, stamped, and buried. The narration pressed in. Injustice doesn't always shout. Sometimes it folds itself into paperwork marked dismissed, waiting to be forgotten. Another flash, a father at a counter, his daughter tugging his sleeve. "Sir, we're overbooked," the agent had said. But the row they'd paid for sat half vacant. He stared, too tired to fight. "Please," he murmured. His voice was the kind that breaks without sound. He left without raising it. Back in the present, the son whispered, "We're not the first, are we?" The father's eyes carried years of unspoken answers. "No, just the first they'll remember." Passengers filing out behind them murmured, fragments of past and present overlapping. "I heard about this once." "Didn't someone sue?" They always settle. Quietly, the mother closed her eyes. So many stories erased, so many names never said aloud. And yet tonight, the aisle had been a stage, and silence itself had carried the weight of history. The daughter tugged her mother's hand. "Will anyone listen now?" The mother bent low, her whisper fragile but steady. "They will. Because they filmed what they tried to forget. And with that, the past, once smothered in quiet, found its echo in the present. Not loud, not raging, but impossible to ignore." The family waited in the corner of the terminal, eyes low but backs unbroken. Silence pressed against them, but inside the father, another silence stirred, one carried from years before. His son muttered, "It's always us." The father looked at him, tired but steady. "Not always. Just often enough that we stop being surprised." The boy frowned. "Like today?" A small pause. The father's memory filled with scattered fragments. "Like the time they checked my bag 3 times, while everyone else walked past. Like when the gate agent asked if I could afford my own ticket. Like when they smiled, but not with their eyes." The mother added softly, "They call it random. But it's never random, is it?" The father shook his head. His voice broke into short, uneven lines. "It's the laugh too quick, the stare too long, the silence when you deserve an answer. Doesn't scream, doesn't shove, just cuts," the daughter whispered, "like glass." He looked at her surprised, then nodded. "Yes, small pieces, sharp. You don't see them coming until you're bleeding." For a moment, none of them spoke. Around them, passengers scrolled their phones, some glancing, some pretending not to. The world continued as though nothing had happened. Inside, the father felt both collapse and clarity. This wasn't new. This wasn't sudden. It was the same story, only told louder this time. The boy clenched his fists. "Then what now?" The father placed a hand over them, steady, firm. "Now, we don't let them make us bleed in silence." And in that stillness, quiet dignity rose where words had been stolen for years. The family had barely stepped out of sight when a small sound cut through the hush, a phone's buzz, sharp and insistent. At first it was just one, then another, then a chorus. Screens lit up row by row, each glow reflecting the same truth. The silence was no longer contained. A young reporter whispered almost to himself. "It's already trending." His voice trembled as he stared at his phone. The woman beside him leaned closer. "Trending?" He turned the screen, hesitant. A video played back. The father's calm hand lifting the tickets. The child's trembling question, the attendant's sharp tone. The clip was only seconds long, but it was enough. "Look at the comments," he said. His thumb scrolled. Lines blurred past. Again? Same airline, different family. "When does it end?" Someone behind him muttered. "I saw the same thing last year." "Same gate," the reporter exhaled. They tried to erase those stories. "This one," he shook his head. "This one won't disappear." Phones lifted higher, not just to capture, but to amplify. Each angle told the same story. Each post carried the same wound. Inside the cabin, attendants exchanged nervous glances. Their silence grew heavier than their commands. The mother, standing in the corridor, caught sight of the glowing screens through the doorway. She whispered, almost inaudibly, "They're watching." Her husband squeezed her hand. "Good. Let them." What had been humiliation moments earlier began to shift. Not erased, not healed, but transformed into something larger than any one family could carry alone. The story was no longer theirs to hold in silence. It belonged to every screen, every voice, every witness, and this time it refused to stay buried. Behind the frosted glass of the terminal office, voices dropped to low, hurried tones. The manager's tie sat loose at his collar, sweat forming under the weight of headlines already flashing on the screens outside. "Let's handle this quietly," he whispered, leaning toward his assistant. His words carried less command than plea. The assistant hesitated. "Sir, the videos—" "I said quietly," he snapped, but his voice broke halfway. From the corner, the reporter who had stayed behind spoke, not loud, but steady. "Quiet won't survive the storm you've started." The manager turned, sharp. "This doesn't concern you." "It does," the reporter replied, phone still in hand. "It concerns everyone now." "You can't erase what the world has already seen." Silence stretched. The hum of air conditioning felt louder than breath. The assistant lowered her eyes, speaking almost in a whisper. "People are demanding statements." "Apologies." The manager's hand trembled as he reached for a file only to drop it halfway. Papers scattered, the sound small but piercing. The reporter's gaze lingered. Authority doesn't disappear in one moment, but it cracks. And today, he paused, letting the words hang. Today it cracked. For the first time, the manager didn't answer. His jaw clenched, but no words came. Through the glass, the glow of countless phones outside burned like a silent jury. Every second of silence inside the office felt like judgment tightening its grip. The assistant, still staring at the floor, murmured, "Sir, they won't forget this one." And in that fragile pause, authority wavered, its voice smaller than the whispers it once controlled. The glass door swung open, and the hum of whispers died instantly. A sleek black car had delivered more than a man. It delivered judgment. The CEO stepped onto the jet bridge, shoes clicking softly, his presence heavier than the guards who once dragged a family out. The gate agent, the same one who had barked orders minutes earlier, straightened her jacket, trying to mask the tremor in her hands. "Sir," she began, but her voice failed halfway. He didn't stop walking. Not now. Passengers pressed closer to the windows, their phones already lifted, recording history in silence. Crew members, stiff against the wall, exchanged quick, uneasy glances. The CEO's eyes scanned the room, landing on the empty seats where the family had been forced away. His jaw tightened. "Where are they?" The manager cleared his throat, voice thin. "Escorted out as per protocol." Protocol? The CEO's tone was calm, but every syllable cut. "Whose protocol humiliates paying passengers in front of children?" The agent tried again. "Sir, it wasn't personal, it was exactly personal," he interrupted, eyes sharp. "And now it's public," silence spread. Even the air felt heavier, pressing down on everyone in the room. Passengers whispered, but their words carried weight. He knows. He saw. He's not protecting them. The CEO turned, his face unreadable. Bring them back. Now. The order was simple, but the crack it carved was irreversible. The gatekeeper's confidence collapsed into stillness, and as the jet bridge held its breath, authority shifted hands, not with shouting, but with a single, quiet command that stripped excuses bare. The family was led back through the jet bridge, heads high, though exhaustion weighed heavy. Phones clicked, cameras flashed. No corner of the room offered escape from the judgment of a watching world. The CEO faced them, voice steady but grave. "We failed. All of us." The mother's eyes locked on him, unreadable. She didn't answer, but her silence spoke louder than any accusation. The flight attendant who had barked orders earlier shifted uncomfortably near the wall. Her face flushed as cameras caught every flicker of her fear. One reporter's voice broke the tension. "Do you still stand by what you did?" The attendant's lips parted, then closed again. She glanced toward the manager, toward the CEO, searching for someone to shield her. No protection came. The father of the family leaned forward, his tone calm, almost too calm. "You dragged my children out in front of strangers. You thought no one would care." The attendant's hands shook as she tried to form words. I was following rules." The CEO cut in, his tone sharper than before. "Rules don't strip people of dignity. Choices do." The attendant's chest rose and fell quickly, but no defense could stand against the silence that followed. Every flash of the cameras etched her collapse deeper into the moment. For years, she had enforced silence, counted on it, hidden behind it. But now silence consumed her. Her eyes dropped to the floor, her voice barely a whisper. "I didn't think it mattered." The mother finally spoke, steady, unshaken. "It always mattered. You just didn't see it until now." The room held its breath. Power had shifted, quietly, completely. The room stayed heavy after the mother's final words. No one dared move, but the cameras kept rolling. A reporter, breaking the silence, turned to the father. "Sir, would you like to say something?" He stood slowly, shoulders straight but tired. His eyes swept the room, across the trembling attendant, the rigid manager, the CEO standing in the middle like a man balancing two worlds. His voice was calm, low, but each word cut sharp. "All we wanted was to sit." The sentence landed harder than any speech. Passengers in the terminal froze. Reporters stopped typing. Even the cameras seemed to hesitate before flashing again. The father let the silence stretch before adding, "We weren't asking for favors. Just the seats we paid for. That's it." The attendant's lips quivered. She whispered, "I didn't mean..." But the father didn't look at her. He kept his gaze on the CEO, steady, unblinking. "My children watched what you did. They'll remember. Not the rules. Not the excuses. They'll remember the shame." The CEO lowered his head. The weight of history pressed into the small room, heavier than any policy manual. Reporters scribbled, but none interrupted. They knew the story had already been written in 7 words. All we wanted was to sit. The father exhaled slowly, sat back down, and rested a hand on his daughter's shoulder. His restraint spoke louder than rage ever could. No one argued. No one replied. The fight ended not with shouting, but with dignity standing unshaken in a man who refused to be broken. And in that quiet, authority bent. The news spread faster than she could breathe. Clips replayed on every channel. The father's line etched into headlines, his dignity replayed against her shame. In the dim apartment, she sat on the floor, folding her uniform into a cardboard box. The badge slipped from her hand, clinking against the wood. For years it had given her power. Now it burned like a scar. Her phone buzzed again. Another missed call. Another message left unread. She pressed the screen flat against her chest, but the silence on the other end was louder than any insult she'd ever thrown. A knock at the door. She froze, peered through the blinds. A neighbor, once friendly, now turned his face away, pretending he hadn't stopped. The hallway emptied like she carried a plague. Her voice cracked in the stillness. "It wasn't supposed to. I didn't mean..." She cut herself off, the words collapsing into air. On the table, the TV kept playing. The father's voice again. "All we wanted was to sit." The sentence pierced her room like judgment. She reached for the remote, but her hand trembled. Turning it off didn't stop the echo. Narration slipped in like breath. Power doesn't vanish in firestorms. It fades in silence. In the daughter who won't return your call, in the neighbor who won't meet your eyes, in the walls that don't answer back. She lowered herself onto the couch, staring at the packed box. The uniform no longer belonged to her. The silence wrapped tighter, leaving no space for excuses, no shield in authority. The room stayed quiet. For the first time, so did she. The apartment was small, but it felt like a shelter. The children lay curled on the couch, their breathing steady, untouched by the noise of the outside world. The mother tugged a blanket over them, smoothing their hair with a hand that trembled only slightly. She sat back down across from her husband. The single lamp cast a tired glow, leaving half their faces in shadow. For a long while, neither spoke. The silence wasn't empty. It was full, heavy with all they had carried and all they had survived. Finally, the father's voice broke through, low and rough. "We never raised our voices." He paused, looking at the children. "We didn't need to." The mother exhaled, a faint laugh buried in exhaustion. "They wanted us loud, angry. That's how they paint us." Her hand tightened around her mug. "But all we did was sit." He nodded slowly. "And somehow, that was louder than shouting." Narration slipped in gently, like the hum of the night. Their fight hadn't ended in cheers or banners. It ended in stillness. It ended with restraint strong enough to outlast the storm. The mother leaned closer, her voice breaking but steady. "They saw us. Not the picture they wanted? Us?" He reached across the table, resting his hand on hers. The quiet stretched again, but this time it was not suffocating. It was grounding. The clock ticked softly. Outside, the city carried on, cars passing, sirens in the distance. But in this room, justice had already spoken. No champagne. No cheering. Only the quiet weight of dignity pressed into the walls, the air, the sleeping children. The victory was real. The celebration was silence. The living room had grown quieter, though the father's last words still lingered. The mother sat upright, her hands folded in her lap, the same way she had on the plane. A knock at the door broke the stillness. She hesitated before opening it, finding a young reporter standing outside, notebook in hand, voice careful. "Ma'am, I don't want to disturb. Just a few words, if you'd allow." She studied his face, nervous, almost apologetic. Then she nodded, stepping aside. Inside, the reporter lowered his voice, as if not to wake the children. "People, they want to hear your side. Not the headlines. Just you." The mother sat again, her tone steady. "Headlines will fade. Dignity won't." The reporter leaned forward. "When they forced you out, did you want to shout back? To fight?" Her eyes flickered, a brief shadow across her calm. "Of course. But silence carries too. Sometimes louder. That day, it wasn't about proving strength. It was about not letting hate write our story." The reporter wrote quickly, then slowed, listening more than scribbling. "So, what do you want people to remember?" She glanced toward the bedroom door, where soft breaths of her children seeped into the room. "That dignity is louder than hate. And this time, the world finally listened." The reporter didn't reply. He only closed his notebook gently, as though the words were heavier than paper could hold. Later, when he left, the mother returned to the quiet. No applause, no cameras, no lights. Just the faint echo of her own sentence, already larger than her living room, already carried further than any plane could go. Tomorrow passengers would board again, but none could board without remembering.